to do that kind of end-to-end monitoring, to figure out all the different paths that we have between our remote branches and our headquarters and the cloud, and let's follow the best path. That can be done automatically if you install a CSR 1000V and integrate it into your Viptela deployment. Meraki has the same capability. They have a VMX. So one of their MX firewalls basically is virtualized, and you can deploy it to AWS or Azure. Cisco acquired Viptela in 2017. Now, at the time, Viptela was a leader, if not the leader, in SD-WAN technology, right? So we talk about best of breed in SD-WAN. That is truly the legacy that they left, and Cisco has picked up the torch and continued on with continued advancements. Cisco is also best of breed from a security perspective, right? And there are different products that may be somewhat equivalent to them, whether it's a firewall or web security or an email security or something along that, but they're best of breed in all of those categories. And so one of the beautiful things that they've done, and this was just last year in the fall, is enable all their security technologies within the routers that we're deploying for SD-WAN. So we talked about all these different endpoints, essentially, that we should really have some kind of enterprise-grade filtering in place to protect us from whether it's the mobile threats or the home users or within our cloud. We need to have something in place to protect the organization. Well, Cisco now offers that. Enterprise firewall, classification of over 1,400 layer 7 applications, IPS, URL filtering with a bevy of reputation scores, and Cisco Umbrella. They've also bundled AMP. Now, I don't know if you guys have been introduced to AMP at this point. Hopefully so. Cisco now refers to it as AMP everywhere. We can have malware protection on our firewalls. We can have malware protection AMP for endpoints on the actual end clients. We can have malware protection on our routers. We can have malware protection in our web security and our email security. In every security product that Cisco has, they have in Meraki's MX firewalls. In every security product we now have AMP detection going on. And the beautiful thing is that that is all feeding into Talos. Now, Talos is Cisco's threat database, essentially. As far as I know, it's the largest staffed threat intelligence database in the world. The NSA aside, maybe. But they capture three many as times the traffic that Google sees every single day. They're getting reports back from every AMP deployment, every firewall they've deployed with firepower services every day, and they just have an incredible view of networking really around the world. And they're able to then leverage that information, figure out what bad actors are at play, and that intelligence can get pushed down to your infrastructure. And we've got that packaged in. So when you think about simplicity, right? Okay, I want to connect all these places together, but the priority almost over anything is becoming, I've got to secure these places first. We've got the best in breed firewalling, filtering capabilities, and that's through all those technologies that you see right there. Fantastic solution. All right. 2019, again, we'll see what challenges kind of come. One thing I did want to earmark that this is something that Viptela can do that would put it out above Meraki is this idea of service chaining. So I've worked with a couple of clients that are international, and one, in fact, was a parent company for several other companies. And so their SD-WAN requirements were a little bit different because they not only wanted to segment from a security perspective, but from an organizational perspective. Those of you that have gone through acquisitions, you've probably experienced this and lived it, right? So what do we do? Well, Viptela allows you to have completely separate SD-WAN deployments, essentially, using the same hardware. We did this with one bank for compliancy reasons. They wanted all their ATMs on a completely separate network. It all gets transferred back to their data centers and then gets handed off to their service providers from there via a dedicated firewall connection, right? For the international organizations, they have some companies in Europe that they need access to the internet, but I'm not going to plan on backhauling them or anything like that. So we can build a regional topology over in Europe and North America. But then they also had acquisitions going on. So they had I think 35, 40 site acquisition going on. Okay, well, we want to keep this entity separate, especially for now. We get into IP addressing challenges, all that kind of stuff. And so you can really custom make the WAN topology that you want. You could do this within your own organization. Maybe I have a class of remote offices to use. Class A, Class B, Class C. Maybe we keep them separate for some reason. There are a lot of different topologies. And that's why when I started this thing, I said I kind of want to go end to end and see where we've gotten. Because we've matured over time in the requirements of the network and what we're being asked by our different organizations to do. If this is one of your requirements, or could potentially be, I would strongly consider the Viptela solution, because this has been instituted and works wonderfully, and I get rave reviews about it after the fact. It's a great solution. All right. Last but not least, all right, 2020. What's next? So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. It'd be nice. I could really make some awesome recommendations then. But I will tell you what's coming next from Cisco's perspective. Now, many of you maybe attended our DNA Center seminar last year, or we've had conversations about it since. The drive of the entire industry, networking industry, is to get to something called intent-based networking, where you and I are allowed to focus a lot less on trying to build all these pathways together and make sure they stay alive. We're going to allow software to do that. And then we get to start working on what are the policies of the organization. Maybe it's a complex topology like that regional, SD-WAN domain over here and over here. Maybe it's more a drive from a security perspective, where I've got different pieces and components within the organization, and I need to segment my traffic end to end. So Cisco came up with a solution, and that is led by their DNA architecture and the DNA Center appliance, that within a LAN, I can do some incredible, they call it software-defined access, which basically means you plug in, you get authorized to, to be a part of the group that you should be, a lot of times through AD, and then you're given certain permissions based upon that. Plug in anywhere you want, right? It's also kind of transport independence. I don't care if you're connected to wireless or wired, you're going to get the same policy, performance policies, security policies, every time, no matter where you go. We need to tie that all in together, not just for one campus, not just for 5 campuses, but all 100 of our campuses that we might have. So the vision for software-defined anything is that we can start merging our topologies so that whether you're accessing from home, or whether you're accessing from a remote office, or whether you're accessing from headquarters, or whether you're, no matter where you are, and you're trying to access resources, your own private data center, your own public cloud, software as a service, any of those things, we're going to rely on the software to automate the security permissions and tell you where you can go and that kind of thing. That requires a little bit of effort, and they're not quite there yet, but it is the vision that they, and I would say the industry as a whole, even if you look at some of the other competitors, everybody's marching towards this software-defined future. So like it or not, we're going to get there at some point. We've got SDA in the campus through DNA Center, and that will integrate well with SD-WAN powered by Viptela or even Meraki at this point, right? There's integrations between the two. So a ton of automation and end-to-end visibility in the coming years. Think where we were in 2011 and where we are now. Think where we'll be in 2030 or so on. Landscapes are changing very quickly, and software-defined anything at this point is really becoming the only tool that we'll be able to rely on to do that. Another small note, before I get to the case studies, another small note on what's upcoming. A lot of you probably, if you have been deploying ISRs all along, right? You might still have 2900s or even 4000s that have PRI lines or POTS lines, FXO, FXS cards, that kind of thing. To this point, that has not been a function of the SD-WAN dashboard where you can centrally manage that. And so that has been kind of a roadblock for a number of people. Some people I've worked with, they'll stick a Meraki MX in front of their voice gateway or something like that. This fall, Viptela will introduce the capability to manage all of those products. So if you are in that camp, please converse with me because we can accommodate it, not yet, but in the short-term future. All right. One of the other things I felt like has tripped up a number of us in adopting SD-WAN or really kind of sinking our teeth into it is there are different ways that you can approach SD-WAN from a kind of a return on investment. The biggest one that everybody likes to tout is circuit cost. And we see that here. Manufacturing case study, some of the challenges that they experienced to begin with was they just said, I had an untenable WAN as a result of vast network covering 88 sites worldwide. It's a lot to manage. I get it. Balancing trying to grow with actually costs associated with that was a real challenge for this organization. They needed to improve capacity and the performance of their global network. So the thing that demonstrators will run to is this cost savings. And a lot of times it can be dramatic. Sometimes that just gets down to finding creative ways to look at different circuits. I mentioned earlier you can do MPLS, broadband, right? We're transport agnostic, transport independent. For these tier 1 sites, I might still have a real high quality circuit in there, but then I might back end it with a broadband. Maybe some lower criticality sites, I just give them a couple broadbands and it makes everybody happy because they get so much more bandwidth than they previously had. In this case, this manufacturer reduced their MPLS bandwidth cost by an average of 64% per site. So they did have great significant cost savings. Sometimes it may not even be about the cost savings. We just really need more performance, right? And in this case, it's a retail, 3,500 stores, 100,000 employees. So this is a scale that we talked about. If you're worried at all about scale, it's not a problem. They have solved this. I should have included. Meraki has 1.x million devices deployed, all registered to their cloud, all operating. Viptela. This is an actual Viptela deployment. I can tell you, 3,500 stores, 100,000 employees, the thing scales just fine. They saw their bandwidth was their most critical need, and so they were able to acquire 3 times the bandwidth that they had previously. Now, it also came at a 40% cost reduction, so I'm sure that was powerful to the CFO. But the real goal of this deployment was increasing the bandwidth, and we were able to accomplish that. A healthcare provider, right? Number of sites, again, one of their primary challenges was specialized configurations. And I see that a lot of times, right? Every site's a snowflake. It's individual. There are ways to build that within SD-WAN where you have very structured templates. And you can change addresses here and there and make that. But the foundation and the structure for it is highly standardized still. So they were able to, with that, right? It comes with specialized configurations, mistakes, errors. We've all done it, right? With standardization, with software-driven WAN technology, a lot of those get eliminated. And so they went from application performance, right? The thing that users will call you about, which will land a ticket on your help desk, from 4x to 10x. Here we see customers save 67% over 3 years by replacing their legacy solution with Cisco Meraki MXs. So again, I kind of showed from a deployment perspective how simple and straightforward the dashboard was. But here the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, where we're saving almost 70% over 3 years on that investment. They also were able to build a secure network. So one thing I kind of glossed over, but all of our connections are VPN enabled, right? And so all of the traffic, whether it's traversing the MPLS or the internet or some other kind of transport, is encrypted end-to-end between those locations. For the bank that I mentioned we worked with, they had to spin up that second SD-WAN domain to service their ATMs. No problem. It's all encrypted end-to-end. We can get that traffic. It went from the ATM directly into the Viptela box and then ended up at their service provider at the other end in their data center. So fully compliant, in this case HIPAA for medical reasons. Financial case study, largest bank in the US with more than 1,100 locations and 2,500 ATMs. This gets to the future as well. For most of us, we're not managers. We don't make all the decisions, and somebody's going to come to us and tell us what they need. And so this is also a reason to look into the future and consider SD-WAN from the perspective that we need to remain agile, right? And so whether it's entertaining new types of transports, 5G coming down the road, whether it's responding to, in this case, software development, right? Where they had some web services architecture, they call them fintechs. Just some developer that could offer a lot to the bank if we could enable the right data exporting and all that kind of stuff. Well, without the SD-WAN solution, they would have never been able to capture that data. In this case, they were able to do it. There's an API built in here, point it to this location. Here are our metrics from our WAN going back and forth. From the applications we see on there, and then those guys that wrote specialized applications to process all that data can provide real value to the bank because of it. If we didn't have SD-WAN deployed, I'm never going to get that data out of it. All right, so cost savings is certainly, and circuits is certainly a starting point. But there's also security. There's also sometimes data consumption, and just being able to be agile to the needs of your organization. And I think this is our last case study, but life sciences testing and measurement manufacturer with 12,000 employees in 30 countries and 120 global sites. What do they need? We're not all very dissimilar, right? I need bandwidth, I need availability, and I want to cut down my expenses. I know they're a huge organization, but isn't that what we're all kind of after in the end anyway? And they were able to do it. They now have better capabilities, including monitoring, integrated security, more bandwidth, and better performance. I feel at this point I'm becoming a broken record from the tenets of SD-WAN. But they're there, they have been, and they'll continue to be.